when I think about what this channel is supposed to serve, the purpose of what we do, and how we cannot ignore these realities anymore, it pains for me to have to show this, but this is why we have to bear witness and see it every time we go live. Gaza holds mass funeral for 112 killed in Israel's 2003 Sabra attack. Now, what they're not telling you in the headline is that this was a funeral for 112 children. Thousands joined to bury the remains after they were recovered from rubble of homes destroyed during Israel's genocidal war. As we said, there's going to be countless amounts that will appear as a result. From Bashar Abu-Zakari, more than 100 Palestinians whose bodies were trapped beneath rubble for nearly 3 years, have been laid to rest in Gaza City, in one of the largest mass funerals held in the enclave since Israel's genocidal war on Gaza began. Thousands of people gathered on Tuesday to bury the remains of 112 members of the Abu Sharia and Al-Hassaniya families after rescue teams recovered their bodies from the site of a November 2023 Israeli attack in the Sabra neighborhood. I think I remember this one. It was like a big gaping bomb hole in the ground, if I remember correctly. According to Palestinian officials, the November 22nd, 2023 attack killed 308 members of the two families, including 40 children, 30 women, and 7 people with disabilities. Rescue teams recently recovered more than 100 bodies from the site, allowing families to hold funeral prayers and burials. Palestinian authorities say about 157 people remain missing, either still beneath the rubble or otherwise unaccounted for. Rows of coffins draped in the Palestinian flag were carried through Gaza City as mourners gathered for the funeral. Large banners bearing photographs of the victims were displayed alongside calls for an end to Israel's war on Gaza that began in October of 23. The Palestinian Civil Defense in Gaza described the funeral as one of the largest held in the territory during the war, with spokesman Mahmoud Basal posting on X that Gaza was set for an exceptional and painful scene. He said the funeral procession reflected the scale of the human losses suffered by Palestinian families who have waited years to bury their relatives. The funeral also prompted an outpouring of grief from Palestinian researchers, activists, and human rights advocates, many of whom have said it symbolized the suffering of families still waiting to recover loved ones buried beneath the rubble. Mustafa Barghouti, Secretary General of the Palestinian National Initiative, described the funeral as potentially being the largest funeral in Palestinian history. Palestinian researcher Mahmoud Hamid Al-Aliyah said Gaza was extracting the bodies of its children from underneath the rubble after years of genocide. What heart can bear this pain? Activist Mohammed Haniyah said dozens of other bodies have decomposed or are still missing under the rubble. Another activist, Ali Abu Rezik, said the procession, scroll please, turned massacre statistics into coffins and shrouds, highlighting that some families searched through the rubble with their bare hands because the shortages of heavy equipment. Online bloggers, including Malik Al-Shanbari and Khalid Safi, viewed the funeral not merely as a burial ceremony, but as a renewed testament to the scale of the tragedy left behind by the war. Rami Abdu, the chairman of the Euromed Human Rights Monitor, said around 200 members of the Abu Sharia family are still believed to be beneath the rubble, and that their remains may have decomposed. So you think? Of course they have. The funeral also highlighted the fate of thousands of other Palestinian families who are still waiting to recover the remains of their relatives, believed to be missing beneath the rubble across Gaza. The funeral was held amid ongoing Israeli violations of a ceasefire in October. As of Monday, continued Israeli strikes have killed at least 1,250 Palestinians and injured 4,110 others. The so-called ceasefire deal was signed after more than 2 years of Israel's genocide, we don't have to say war, on Gaza, which has killed at least, and again, we know that you should probably times it by 10, 73,375. We know the Lancet has said that it's at least 600,000 to 700,000 at this point. Palestinians, and wounded at least 174,220, most of them women and children. About 90% of Gaza's infrastructure has also been damaged or destroyed during the genocide. Meanwhile, the Assembly of Palestinian Clans and Families called on the Western-backed Board of Peace, to accelerate efforts to recover bodies still trapped beneath the rubble, clear the debris, and support the reconstruction of Gaza. It is said the burial of 112 Palestinians may have marked the end of the long wait for some families, but it did not end the search for thousands of others missing. Abdul El-Sayed's victory was a victory that brought everything kind of full circle in many respects. In a state of exceptional consequence, the Democratic Party cannot win the White House without Michigan. Everybody knows that. Abdul El-Sayed won an election that, from all counts, was outspent 10-1. The entire establishment was behind Haley Stevens. Abdul El-Sayed also had to do with the fact that he is a Muslim, he is a progressive, and he is unabashedly free Palestine, as well as several other issues that are very important. And he won. Which means that a certain amount of the tide has officially turned. I also want to give a shout out to everybody who's currently watching on X. We have incorporated X now into our live stream. I bit the bullet. We are paying for X now. Yes, I know. I'm giving Elon 0.000000001% towards his net worth. But I feel that getting this message out there to more people is important. So if you are watching on X and you're not currently subscribed on YouTube, please make sure that you join us over here. And why do I bring this up? Why is this so important? I bring this up because if anybody has been paying attention to what the fallout has been after Sayed's win, again, McMorrow immediately came out and endorsed him. Haley Stevens says that she's supporting him. We'll see. Then you also have a handful of others, led by, of all people, Kamala Harris, coming out saying that she supports him. Now, obviously, a lot of the establishment wouldn't dare get involved in this. You know, Gretchen Whitmer, of course, is obligated to say that she supports him, but a lot of others will not. And when you think about everything that is still going on regarding the genocide, all of that, and then you think about the people who have their hands out, ready to take the payday, to continue to push the pro-Zionist, pro-Israel narrative, that brings us to the worst commentary from the election victory, and that has to go to Vann Jones.
Say a word about that, because we've talked about this before, and I speak as you know, as the son of a Jewish refugee, so issues of anti-Semitism are very personal to me. I think that what you see in Michigan is a interest group spending $30 million. She's got $64 million in television spending, and they're responsible for at least half of that. And one of the issues, as Kristen mentioned, that people are grappling with is the power of money in our politics, the influence that interest groups have. And I think it's a legitimate question.
After all these years since Citizens United, and even before then, but obviously Citizens United put it on steroids, now you think it's worth questioning? I mean, this is David Axelrod. This is Obama's guy from his first presidential run. You know, you got to give credit where credit's due. He did get the job done. And it's a lot more recent history than James Carville when he did his deed with Clinton back in the early 90s. Nevertheless, even to have this type of admission is rarefied air, especially on CNN.
Should essentially an agent of any foreign government, whether it's Israel or any other, be able to spend, is it healthy for them to spend $30 million in a race like this to influence the outcome of that race? I think that's a legitimate issue.
Look, well, I mean, I get your point. I don't think that they're an agent of a foreign power. I think they're American Jews, as you said.
Their mission is to support the policies of the Israeli government.
Well, I'm paid to be a complete Uncle Tom, so I'm going to stick with it. I'll dance like Bojangles. Hey, what do you say? You know, that's what he's doing. David Axelrod, without missing a beat, looks right back at him. And this guy's a Jew. He's looking right at him and saying, no, this is a foreign lobby that should be registered under FARA. And it is clear that you are paid by them to defend them. When David Axelrod is talking like this is a guy who sees the tea leaves moving in a direction and he doesn't want to get left behind. This is how political pundits stay relevant through many peaks and valleys of the machinations of the political arena. Axelrod is very good at this. There's a reason why people still listen to him and why he's not an overly offensive individual. Somebody like Vann Jones, who clearly is in it for the money and the fame and the power, loves the attention. He doesn't have anything legitimate to say. His talking points are completely out of date. He has to recognize that, I would think, at this point. But nope, he's going to dig in a little deeper.
I think their issue is to protect Israel, but you have to ask
No. But Van, read what they're.
I'm happy to be corrected by you, but I also like to make my own point, which is that why is AIPAC going after this guy? That would be the question. They're spending, what you said, $30 million? That's a lot of money. Is it because he's a Muslim guy? Is it because he's a hateful guy? It turns out his position is for a full military embargo of the state of Israel. Now, hold on a second. A full military embargo. Now, listen, if he says he wants to condition aid, that's reasonable, defensible. Most Democrats feel that way at this point after Gaza. If he says no subsidies, that's defensible. He says we can't even sell weapons to Israel, even if they're defensive.
Wonderful. You know, I think if I lived in Michigan, I might vote for that guy. He's got a very Muslim name, you know, like Barack Hussein Obama, but I kind of like the cut of his jib. I think he might be worth my support. As much as I dig that country twang of Haley Stevens. This is Michigan, mind you. I think Abdul El-Sayed might be onto something. I think he might be onto something. Yeah, he is. Dance, Bojangles, dance.
So if this guy, so why is AIPAC so mad? This guy is saying that the United States government can't even sell defensive weapons to Israel, which would make Israel completely defenseless. Now, that would be a reason for a group of people who cares about Israelis to say, this is not our guy.
So, Van, can I just say this? And Haley Stevens ran in 2022 after her district was redistricted. She ran against Andy Levin.
Yeah, Andy Levin.
And Andy Levin, his position was that aid to Israel should be conditional on not pursuing policies that would subvert a two-state solution there. That would be considered a mainstream position now by many people. They spent millions of dollars to defeat him. They spent millions of dollars this year to defeat Tom Malinowski, who said, I can't guarantee that I will support every funding position. So I take your point, but this is not just about this race. This is about the entire panoply of races.
What we're going to do is we're going to stick around.
I don't know how Vann Jones does it, but I also understand that there are people who are simply just driven by money and power. That is their drive, that is their calling in life. This is why they do what they do. It isn't about right and wrong. Those things don't even enter their mind. How could they? There is no defense of this. They're going to try. The mounting defense from Zionists, from those that are paid by the Zionists, it is going to be interesting to see how far they're willing to go. It is going to be interesting to see how it unfolds. Now, I don't have the highest expectations that this can be duplicated in all places, because it can't. It didn't work for Shama Sawant. It didn't work for Cori Bush. We already saw Will Lawrence, the congressional primary winner in, I think, the 11th congressional district of Michigan. He's already showing that he's going to play ball. Whenever there is a monumental victory, it's great to see it. And we have major tasks at hand that we have to work on. But understand, it's very easy to get sucked up into the vacuum that is the establishment. It's very easy, because there's a lot of temptation in there. And I'm not trying to get biblical here, but there is no question that as much as we say there is value in who you elect, depending on the situation, the change that we seek is going to come outside the ballot box. I believe that most people in this point have come to that realization. At least I hope they have. I thought about diving in to one more story this evening, but I think we're going to hold it here. I know that this was not the show that we anticipated we were going to have tonight, but I hope that on a audible type situation, you guys are happy with where we went. I feel cautiously optimistic for El-Sayed for now, but let me assure you, if you think he's felt the heat yet, that was merely an appetizer compared to what the entree is going to be like. And even though a number of people are going to say the right thing right now, El-Sayed is great, we have his back, he wins, we've got to defeat the Republican Mike Rogers in November. Remember, public position, private position. Say that you love him in public, destroy him in private. And they will try to destroy him. That is how this is going to go down. I hate saying it. I wish this was not the case, but I'm telling, hear me now, quote me later, this is how it's going to go down. Period. And I'm not trying to, like I said, give anybody a sense of false hope. Do I think Sayed can win the general election? Yeah, he could, for a few reasons. It is a blue wave, if you will, kind of year. We'll see how it ultimately pans out at the once we get to the election. But remember, there's a lot that can change between now and the first week of November. In the course of 3 months in electoral politics, in election season, that's a lifetime. But he should be the favorite. Everybody is welcome to share their thoughts here. This is a real open debate. It's the way it's supposed to be. No, he will not. That is not happening. But I do think he can win. I do think El-Sayed can absolutely win the general. I do. But do not for a second underestimate just how far the establishment will go, especially if there is a path to capturing the Senate that doesn't involve Michigan. Now, I don't see that happening, and I don't see it happening for a few reasons. The first is I am not convinced at all. It's just my opinion. Some of you might disagree with me. Some of you might agree with me. I do not believe for a second that Troy Jackson has anywhere near the chance to win the Senate race in Maine the way that Graham Plattner did before everything went to hell. Despite everything that you see on paper, Tellerico is an infinitely better candidate than Paxson. I have no doubt that he is probably in the running to win, but it's still Texas. And even though it's a blue wave year, and this situation feels even more favorable, I think Tellerico is a more liked candidate than O'Rourke ever was back in 2018, even though I think that Ted Cruz is more detestable, generally speaking, than Ken Paxton. But Ken Paxton's pretty fucked up to begin with. So it could happen, but it's not a guarantee. And in the end, the Democratic Party survives by not giving in to the working class uprising and the anti-Israel uprising. They know where their bread is buttered. They're much better at selling empire than the GOP could ever be. And that's why they get away with what they get away with. So we will see how this ultimately plays out. But I do think that if nothing else, the fact that Saeed made the Israel lobby set over $70 million on fire, good. Let him keep losing. Because like I said, the one thing that that ideology understands is money and power. That is their primary driver. And if they start consistently lighting their money on fire, they're not going to know what to do. So here's hoping that's how it pans out.